I never thought I'd see the day where someone managed to piss me off at my workplace. You know, honestly, I'm a very hard person to piss off. You know, and I didn't expect it to happen. And do you want to guess what it was? An old fucking hag of a woman. Oh my gosh. It's very obvious. There's some people that just have a stick up their fucking hole. It's very obvious which parents were the abusive parents. It's very obvious, especially with old people in particular, when their life did not go the way they wanted to. Like, it's my experience is old people are either really sweet, really humble, whatever the fuck was wrong with them when they were younger, they're after being stripped away. But there is some fucking bitter ass old people, typically women in my experience, but I've had some deals with some shitty men now, shitty old men. But it's very obvious when someone, they fuck their life up. No one in their family probably puts up with their bullshit anymore. And they are looking for any excuse to get a reaction out of people and to fuck up someone else's day. And honestly, I think that's the most pathetic shit I've seen in a while. You know? They are trying to look for any excuse for me to be a cunter. Because the thing is, I wasn't actually a cunter. You know? Whatever. And then, when she went around to paying, she threw a fucking 50 at me like I was some sort of prostitute. You know? Like, god damn. You know? And then I wished her to have a lovely day. But see, what doesn't make sense is her husband was lovely. Her husband, when I served him, he was lovely. And it's like, how the fuck do the two of ye end up together? You know? Like, listen, I don't really like speaking about my aunt on this or anything like that, because I just recently moved out of her house or whatever. But it's the type of thing where it's like, the main life lesson I learned about living at my aunt's house is, fuck me, you gotta be careful who you marry, because that bitch was crazy. You know, like, I'm not, like, my aunt, that's obviously the one I'm related to, but like, I would genuinely hear their arguments sometime between my aunt and her husband, and I would be there, and I'm like, how the fuck are like 3 out of your 4 kids half Brazilian, and you're here calling him the N-word and all this shit every other 5 seconds? You know? And it's the type of thing where it's like, you gotta be so fucking careful who you marry. Because, see, it's the type of thing, me and my aunt, obviously, we don't speak no more. Obviously, I'm not gonna fucking lie to you and be like, oh my god, I felt nothing, that woman didn't piss me off or whatever. But what more struck me is, sure, that was a raging bitch. You know, that was an absolute raging bitch I didn't want to fucking deal with. But what struck me more is, how is her husband such a nice fucking person? How the fuck are the two of you together? You know? Like, what the fuck did he see in that bitch? And I'm being dead serious when honestly, sometimes I look at some couples and I'm like, what the fuck did you see in them? You know, like, I've had friends where it's like, they're really attractive, they're really pretty. Well, I've basically said they're really pretty twice. They're really pretty, they're sweet, they're smart, you know. They got a tiny bit of a personality to them. And you know what? Like, a load of people want to date them. And they go for an ugly yoke who's a dickhead who's probably going to end up cheating on them. And it's like, what the fuck? You know, like my tattoo here, right? I just have to get my collarbone done or whatever. And it says, it's a flower and it says, we accept the love we think we deserve. And, like, lads, bro, I've been traumatized like a motherfucker. And even I wouldn't accept going into some of the relationships like some people from okay backgrounds went into. You know, like, how the like, my thing is, how do you have a kid with someone that's fucking vile? Because her grandkids were with her too. And it's not even, and like, now I'm facing the mental dilemma. Were they different when you met them? They had to be fucking different. They had to turn into a cunt. Like, did a lot of people put on a front about who they were when they first met their husband, wife, whatever the fuck, and then suddenly they showed their real personality and turns they were like a vile fucking piece of shit. You know? And like my thing, hey, listen, I've accepted some shitty ass treatment I shouldn't have accepted before, and stuff like that. But like, how the fuck are some people still staying together? You know, like, my thing is, you're after being cheated on, for example, something like that, and you don't have kids with them, and you choose to stay. That makes no sense to me. I mean, unless you're in a situation where you're financially dependent on them or something like that, that makes sense. But like, when you have your own freedom, you have your free will, you're not sharing, you're not renting with them, like, you don't need them for anything, and you can snip them out of your life that easily. And I'm like, why the fuck are you staying with them? You know, that doesn't make any sense to me. People be confusing me. I don't even know how my parents were together. I don't even know how the fuck they were together. Like, I've seen some relationships where they actually love each other, like, you know, and they actually support each other, and they like talking to each other, and they love spending time together and stuff like that. But then I've just seen some codependency ass, trauma bonding ass stuff, and I'm like, 1 minute you love each other, the next minute you hate each other, the next minute you want to kill each other, the next minute you're broken up, the next minute you want to spend more time together, and then it's like this vicious repeating cycle. You know, people with toxic relationships, like, I understand it to an extent, but not really. You know, like, statistically speaking, I'm more likely to end up in a toxic relationship because when the two people who were meant to show me love, I wasn't shown that shit properly. I was abused, I was traumatized, all that shit. So obviously, I'm just going to use physical abuse as an example. I would be more likely to accept physical abuse, you know. But obviously, I've changed myself as a person. I'm starting to heal. Like, obviously, I'm not going to get into a toxic relationship because I know I deserve so much better than that. Like, we accept the love we think we deserve. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But, you know, and like, see, my thing is, being in a toxic relationship yourself, at the end of the day, if you're an adult, that's your fucking business. That's your business. Like, if you want to make some shitty life decisions and you're an adult and you're going into your 40s, 50s, 60s, 30s, whatever the fuck, at that point, that's on you. You know, like, I feel like there's certain life decisions people make at certain ages where it's the type of thing where it's like, you have no one to blame but yourself. You know, and that might be a controversial take because obviously if someone went through childhood trauma, that's a horrible thing. That shouldn't have happened, you know? But it's the type of thing where it's like, I kind of hate on the internet people be fucking like infantilizing themselves, you know? And like, obviously adults can be vulnerable, you know? But like, why are people willingly taking away their own power? That's what I don't understand. You know, if you, like, let's say someone's around 21, around there, why would they even want to describe themselves as someone who's not capable? You know? And I understand that a lot of people who get into toxic relationships, it is because the toxic person that they met and they ended up with is because they presented a completely different version of themselves. I've had that. you know. But I hate when, let's say, like, I'm just gonna use woman, man, because that's obviously men can be abused as well. Obviously, that's a completely different topic. I'm just using the most traditional, stereotypical one. 21-year-old woman, 22-year-old fella, they met, they got together. It was all fucking, it was all sunshines, roses. Then he got too angry one night, then he punched the wall. Then it slowly turned into he hit her. You know? And it's the type of thing where a lot of people, they would call her a victim. And they would say how bad they feel about her, feel for her, and stuff like that. And also, and someone needs to go save her. But what I don't understand is, why don't people want her to save herself? Like, obviously some people do want that, you know, and stuff like that. But it's the type of thing, like, I've noticed this pattern in my life. I've tried to drag people out of shitty situations. I've tried to drag people out of shitty relationships and stuff like that. But it's the type of thing is we accept the love we think we deserve, you know. And hypothetically speaking, your best friend is in a toxic relationship and you beg them, please leave him, please leave her, and they do leave their partner, the reality is they're most likely going to end up in another shitty toxic relationship, because that's what, in a weird and sick way, that is most likely the only love they've ever experienced, you know. Most likely their parents made them a victim, and they don't know what it's like not to be a victim, you know. Most likely it's all they've ever known, you know. They don't know what love to accept, and they just kind of go with the motions, you know. Oh, he only pushed me this time. Oh, he gets angry sometimes. Stuff like that. And it's really fucking sad what people accept, you know, and stuff like that. I find it really fucking sad, you know.